My name is Maggie, and I'm a 29-year-old employee at a company. This year, I married my husband William after more than 2 years of dating. We embarked on our married journey in the same apartment I had occupied since my single days. A thoughtful gift from my father when I landed my job. With my brother and his wife opting to live with our parents, I seized the opportunity to carve out my own path. Dad, ever generous, purchased an apartment near our family home. Whether his intention was to provide a safety net or simply keep me nearby, I found myself in a splendid living space. William, accustomed to a cramped apartment, eagerly moved in when we decided to tie the knot. My first encounter with William's family home, nestled in a region blanketed with heavy snow, occurred during winter. Having grown up in the city, the sight of endless snow and biting cold was a revelation. Their house felt like a relic from a bygone era, evoking images from fairy tales. Once they had lived as part-time farmers, surrounded by vast fields and distant neighbors. What truly astonished me was the quaint arrangement of the bathroom facilities, situated outside the house. While I could manage occasional visits, imagining enduring the inconvenience, especially during harsh winters, seemed daunting. Venturing out into the freezing night for a restroom break required a certain bravery, and the idea of showering in plummeting temperatures felt like a recipe for catching a cold. During our wedding visit, I refrained from staying overnight, sparing myself the shower ordeal, but the outdoor toilet proved challenging. Despite the discomfort, my mother-in-law and brother-in-law extended warmth and hospitality. Though we wouldn't be sharing a roof, I was eager to foster a harmonious bond with them. Yet nagging concerns lingered. My mother-in-law's smile faded into murmured complaints whenever alone with my husband, stirring unease. Equally disconcerting was the veil of secrecy surrounding my brother-in-law's past marriage, details my husband chose not to divulge. While every marriage encounters its share of challenges, my husband's reticence about his brother's divorce left me pondering unanswered questions. I didn't want to pester him about it. At our wedding, my mother-in-law wore a bright smile, and my father remarked, "Isn't that great? Your mother-in-law seems so kind." I returned his smile, but my mother had a slightly different take. "She may appear friendly in front of others," my mother cautioned, "but I've noticed she seems less cheerful when she thinks no one is watching. Be cautious, she might be two-faced." Despite my mother's warning, I was confident there wouldn't be any problems as long as we didn't live together. We began our married life in the apartment joyfully and without concerns. However, 3 months after our wedding, my husband started to offload all the household chores onto me and made decisions without consulting me. Although we both worked and had agreed to share household duties, he began shirking his responsibilities. Initially, he would help clean the bathroom and prepare dinner when I got home late. But recently, he grew reluctant to clean, and the responsibility of preparing dinner fell entirely to me. When I returned home late and started cooking, he would sometimes shout impatiently, "Hurry up, I'm hungry from working." I was also coming home exhausted and hungry from work, often finding myself preparing dinner while feeling annoyed. What upset me most, though, was his tendency to make decisions unilaterally. Perhaps there were signs of this before we got married, but I might have mistaken his assertiveness for decisiveness and reliability. Not long after we married, new furniture and a sofa unexpectedly arrived at our apartment. I was taken aback and asked my husband, "What's all this about? Where do you plan to put this sofa and furniture?" My husband smiled and replied, "I don't think the current vibe of this room suits me, so I decided to replace the furniture with pieces that match my taste." He intended to get rid of all the existing furniture without any prior discussion. I would have preferred to change the atmosphere of the room together by choosing furniture that suited both of our tastes. If my husband had consulted with me, we could have made selections as a team, but he disregarded my preferences entirely and made decisions independently. While I have no issue with him decorating his personal space as he pleases, I didn't appreciate his unilateral changes to our shared living area. His sense of design lacked harmony, and I was dismayed by his selection of mismatched furniture in clashing colors and shapes. Then he made an unexpected request. "Would you mind paying for this? After all, this was your apartment originally, wasn't it?" I couldn't believe he was serious and asked him, "Why should I pay for something you bought without consulting me? This furniture was your choice." Though I typically refrain from challenging him, this time I pushed back firmly. My husband seemed momentarily at a loss for words, indicating his reluctance to spend his own money on the furniture he had chosen. This year marked our first Christmas as a married couple, so we decided to celebrate the holiday at his parents' home. It was my first day at my in-laws' house, and I felt a mix of anxiety and nervousness. My mother-in-law greeted me with a warm smile and said, "Maggie, you can relax here." Despite her reassurance, I couldn't simply sit back and relax, as my mother's advice echoed in my mind. I remained cautious, sensing there might be a hidden side to my mother-in-law. When I first arrived, she seemed content to relax, a contrast to the past when brides were isolated in the kitchen. I found it refreshing that we could dine together now, although her nostalgic anecdotes left me puzzled. I noticed my brother-in-law gently cautioning her, but my husband appeared oblivious to any tension. Despite enduring my mother-in-law's sarcastic remarks, I offered to clean up after dinner. She smiled but insisted, "I'll do it. Wouldn't want you to break our precious dishes." Her words echoed my mother's earlier advice, confirming my apprehensions about the first day filled with her biting sarcasm. The following day took a darker turn. With my husband out drinking with friends and my brother-in-law on a fire brigade assignment, it was just my mother-in-law and me. I felt a knot of nerves as she retired to bed after dinner, leaving me alone. As I prepared to take my shower in a separate bathhouse, a chill ran down my spine. While local residents might be accustomed to it, the chilly atmosphere was daunting for me. As I settled into the bathtub, the lights in the main house suddenly flickered out. I froze, straining to hear any unusual sounds. When I glanced out the window, the neighboring house remained illuminated, casting doubt on a simple power outage. A sense of dread crept over me, wondering if my mother-in-law was playing a cruel prank. I hesitated to believe she would stoop to such depths, yet her penchant for sarcasm left me uneasy. With a sinking feeling, I couldn't shake the possibility that something more sinister might be at play. Hurriedly, I exited the shower, hastily dried myself off, and slipped into my pajamas. The room enveloped me in darkness, initially obscuring everything, but gradually, the soft glow of moonlight seeped through, offering faint illumination. As I changed, the absurdity of the situation dawned on me. What a childish prank to play. I attempted to open the door to step outside, but it remained stubbornly shut, unmoved by my efforts to push it open. Even resorting to desperate attempts to force it with my body weight, panic bubbled within me. There was a window, but it was barred from the outside, leaving me trapped. Thankfully, I had my smartphone. With trembling fingers, I dialed my husband's number, seeking his assistance. However, on the third attempt, he finally answered, his voice booming through the receiver, thick with intoxication. "Why are you bothering me? Can't you see I'm busy?" His words pierced through my desperation. Desperately, I pleaded for his help, explaining my predicament, but his response was dismissive, blaming me for the inconvenience. With a final, vague farewell, he disconnected the call, leaving me in a state of disbelief. Subsequent attempts to reach him proved futile as he had switched off his phone. Contemplating my options, I weighed the idea of contacting the authorities, but hesitated, wary of escalating the situation unnecessarily. Fearful of my mother-in-law's potential reaction, I grappled with the decision, unsure of how to proceed. I tried to find a way to escape on my own. I considered shouting out the bathroom window to attract attention, but the window had frozen shut. My husband had warned me that the pipes sometimes freeze in the cold weather, and I feared that if I were trapped all night, I might suffer from the freezing temperatures. As I was reluctantly about to call the police, I heard a voice from outside asking, "Has the breaker tripped? Are the lights out? Hello, is anyone inside?" Hearing that voice was a relief, and soon I heard knocking and the door opened. I expressed my gratitude to the older man standing there, who sighed and said, "She never learns, does she?" Trying to torment her daughter-in-law again. It turned out that this old man was a neighbor and distant relative of my husband's family, and he escorted me to his house. His wife looked surprised to see me, but after the man explained the situation, she invited me in and offered me a blanket since I was only in pajamas. She also served me warm tea. Once I had calmed down, the old man recounted my mother-in-law's troubling history of bullying her son's wives. He told me, "Your mother-in-law has a habit of locking her daughters-in-law in the bathroom." The eldest son's wife was trapped multiple times and eventually left the house. She also locked in your husband's previous fiancé. The couple had noticed the bathroom light on in the dark and grew suspicious, prompting them to check on me. The old couple had witnessed my mother-in-law's behavior before and had come to the rescue on several occasions. Knowing about our recent marriage, they were concerned she might play the same kind of prank on me. As it was already late and the main house was locked, I decided to spend the night with the neighbors. I was awakened by the sound of an ambulance siren. As I looked out the window, I saw the ambulance pulling up to my in-laws' house, with my husband standing rigidly beside the detached bathroom. Concerned, I rushed in that direction, thinking my husband might have mistaken me for still being trapped in the bathroom, and called for help. As I approached my husband, he immediately shouted, "Why is my mother lying there? Weren't you supposed to be trapped in the bathroom?" Startled, I peered into the bathroom and saw a figure stretched out on the ground. The paramedics were speaking to the woman, who slowly sat up and touched the back of her head. It was clear her life wasn't in danger, and I recognized her as my mother-in-law. One of the paramedics explained, "It seems she slipped on some soap on the floor and hit her head, losing consciousness. We'll take her to the hospital for a checkup." In my panic when the lights went out, I might have scattered some soap on the floor, unable to clean it up in the darkness. My mother-in-law must have come into the bathroom to check on me, slipping on the soap and falling. As my mother-in-law was carried out on a stretcher, she shot me a stern glare. My husband joined her in the ambulance to the hospital. The neighbors approached me, offering their reassurance. "We're relieved you're safe. It might be a form of karma for the harassment you faced as a daughter-in-law." I thanked them once again, realizing how fortunate I was for the old man's timely intervention. I might have been the one in the ambulance. I quickly dressed and informed my brother-in-law that our mother-in-law had been taken to the hospital. He said he was heading there immediately. Left alone, I went back to the detached bathroom and pondered the events of the previous night. I noticed a stick at the bathroom door, which had been used to bar it shut, explaining why I couldn't escape. That afternoon, my mother-in-law returned home with my husband and brother-in-law, and she unleashed her anger on me. "Because you left the bathroom without telling me, this happened to me," she fumed. Just as I was about to respond, my husband joined in, directing his frustration at me as well. "Exactly. If Maggie had just stayed in the bathroom, my mother wouldn't have suffered like this," he exclaimed. However, my brother-in-law stepped in and angrily rebuked them both. "What are you two thinking? Stop this cruel game of locking my sister-in-law in the bathroom." Shortly after, my brother-in-law reappeared with a travel bag and declared, "I'm done taking care of my mother. I'm leaving this house. Do as you please." I reached my breaking point and said, "I'm leaving too. Could you drop me off at the nearby station?" My husband desperately tried to stop me. "Who said you could just leave?" he asked. I responded firmly, "Let's get divorced." "Did you help me when I begged you for help yesterday? I'll prepare the divorce papers." I got into my brother-in-law's car, and he drove me to the nearest station, apologizing repeatedly along the way. "I'm truly sorry, Maggie. I never imagined you would suffer like this." "Those cruel people are now strangers to me," he confessed. Once back at my apartment, I swiftly prepared the divorce papers and packed my husband's belongings. Upon his return, my husband was taken aback to see his belongings packed, assuming my mention of divorce was a joke. His mood quickly soured upon seeing the divorce papers. "You want a divorce over something so trivial? You weren't even injured," he protested. Realizing further words were futile, I quietly handed him the divorce papers. Reluctantly, he signed, and my husband left the apartment. However, it soon became apparent that he lacked the funds to rent another place or hadn't yet found one. Throughout our marriage, he had relied on my income, squandering his own salary and accumulating debt. Initially, he stayed with a coworker, but even that support dwindled over time. He found himself homeless, pursued by debt collectors, and eventually lost his job. Similarly, my mother-in-law became the subject of neighborhood gossip, accused of driving her daughter-in-law to divorce. She lived in solitude, shunned by neighbors, and relied solely on her pension for survival. With no one to turn to and being disliked by those around her, she struggled to receive any assistance. Following the divorce, I rid myself of the tacky furniture chosen by my ex-husband and embarked on a fresh start with furnishings of my own preference. I embraced the hope of a better future, eager for new and positive encounters ahead.